times. I think it was somebody in one of the Ravelry forums pointed it out.
Those Ravelry people, they'll
They have sharp eyes.
They do.
But after we've edited the manuscript and made any really big changes, then it goes to layout, and I get a set of page proofs that have the photos dropped in, and both me and my technical editor each get a copy of it. Hi, LB. My technical editor.
No, I'm looking at the other.
I know.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not listening.
My technical editor is my best friend, LB, who's been knitting as long as I have.
So hi, LB.
Hi, LB. Who I wish could be here with me,
Yes.
but she's not. She's working hard. So she looks at them, and I look at them, and my editor at Pottercraft, Rebecca, looks at them, and at this point, you can't make a lot of changes because, obviously it's already been laid out, but there are spaces where, like, if the text doesn't quite fit, Rebecca says, can you cut a couple of sentences here, or can you add a little bit here, and it's at that point we do that. And then a couple of, maybe 3 months later, I get a second set of page proofs with all of those corrections, and it's at that point that everything is set in stone.
It's a go when that book gets printed, huh?
Yeah. And
so
then,
how long?
And then it takes. I swear, it takes them longer to print it than it does for me to design and write. So from start to finish, it's like a year.
Wow.
It takes a year.
Process.
It takes a year. So it's by the time the book comes out, that was so far long ago in the past.
You're like, oh, that thing I wrote a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But what's really interesting is when I got my advanced copies of this, I sat down and I read it, and I'm like, oh, did I write this? It's like, hey, that was pretty cool. Did I really write that?
Did I do that, or did my editor fix that?
Exactly. So it's kind of fun to get it and read it.
Oh yeah.
Out of all of your books, because some people may think there's only two, but there's actually your first book was a sweater design book, right?
Well, no, actually it was a knitting memoir.
Okay. See, I've never even read it because I can't get my hands on a copy.
And that was the literary agent contacted me. He had a friend who was a knitter who'd been reading my blog and said to him, go to this woman's blog. She writes well. She might be.
Because this was before the advent of Ravelry.
Way before. And so I got an email from this guy out of the blue, and so of course I immediately Googled his name to see, because I thought it's probably a joke. And I emailed him back, and we spoke on the phone, and he's one of these people who you are instant friends with. I love him. He's hilarious. He's so much fun. And I think I have since figured out why he wanted to take me on as a client. He wanted a pair of hand knit socks.
Who doesn't want a pair of hand knit socks?
Did his wish get granted?
Yes.
Okay.
But when we were talking about it, he said, I'd like to see you write a book, like a knitting memoir. And we talked about it, and you could have like a project at the end of each chapter.
Okay. And
he said, write me a sample chapter. He said, write me a chapter about socks. And this is when I should have gotten the inkling. So that's what I did.
But you were doing more Alice Starmore sweaters and some other stuff.
I had gotten sick of socks at that point. So, but I wrote, I made up all this heartwarming crap about
how you love socks.
No, I had a really sweet story in it about, I had a friend who was seriously ill, and she had been in the hospital for some really horrible tests, and when they brought her back to her room, when she woke up, the first thing she said is, please put Wendy's socks on my feet. I mean,
very heartwarming.
That was very sweet, and that was the perfect end for that chapter. So I wrote that chapter, and he shopped it around, and he got me a book deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I wrote a book, and it would never have occurred to me to try doing that.
Yeah.
But I'm very obedient. You tell me to do something.
Especially if there's a paycheck involved.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's like he told me to write a book, so I said okay,
Cool.
and
Yeah.
I wrote a book, and
it had several patterns in it. It had
did.
around
There's
7 or 8 patterns.
There were
right?
patterns at the end of each chapter, and I mean, in some of them, like the sock pattern was my generic free pattern that's on my website, and the pattern for the kitty pie.
Yeah, was in there. There was a sweater, like a cabled sweater or something.
There's several. Yeah. There's a couple of tank tops and a sweater and an easy hat. They were all pretty much beginner patterns, but each one was geared towards what the chapter
was about.
If I remember correctly, I haven't
It's
read
been 6 or 7 years.
I haven't
since
read
that
it
book
for
was
a long
published.
time. Yeah, it has been a while. So that was the first one.
So out of all of your patterns, which one is your personal favorite to make?
That's a good question. I would be happy to tell you which one is my least favorite.
Okay,
and
that'll work for now.
I will tell you exactly why when I find
I wonder if it's the one I think it is.
Yeah, that's what I would guess.
Dear God in heaven, do you know
Let me see.
how
It's the
long
thigh-highs.
Oh,
it took me?
So, did you personally knit these?
I would not wish that on
So,
anyone.
yes.
So yes, I knit the thigh high.
And someone else knit the knee socks.
Yes, Izzy Thomas in Richmond. Hi, Izzy, who's an amazing knitter.
Yeah. Well, those are
Knit the
amazing
knee-highs.
socks.
And she didn't talk to me for a while after knitting.
She needed a windy break.
Yeah. No, she's wonderful.
They're
And-
gorgeous.
But in this book, my very favorite pattern is the Norwegian.
Okay, so I think that seals the deal. I think we need a
knit-along
knit along of
And
the Norwegian rose socks.
The knitter who knit these is Roseanne Maroney, and she actually lives in my hometown. She's one of the few knitters that I know who
Is she
actually.
on Clark?
She's not. She has a blog, and it's called Possessed to Knit.
Possessed to knit.
We'll
I'll
have
have
to
to add
show
her
that,
to my
Yeah,
blog.
and she does a lot of color work, and
They're gorgeous
she's a
socks.
wonderful spinner too.
Really?
And her husband Al is Lucy's biggest fan.
Aww.
And Roseanne came over once to play with a
That's
couple
right.
of my
They
spinning
got-
wheels, and Al came with her and brought toys for Lucy. So,
Lucy's
So
they had a
love.
good
They're
they had a
friends
good
now.
time. But I mean, whatever. I don't have one single favorite pattern. It's
Do you
whatever.
have a favorite pattern by someone else? Or is it just what you're knitting on at that point?
Alice Starmore's Fair Isle Luskentire is
I have
my
no idea.
absolute
I don't know if I
all-time.
know that
And I
one.
have an amusing story about
Okay.
that.
Okay.
That's from a long out of print booklet called the Scottish Collection. That that's my retirement if I ever need.
Oh.
That's
money.
what my mom has them all, but Pacific Coast Highway I think is the only one she's missing, and she's like, if you can find that one anywhere,
I do have
and
that
it's
one.
on eBay I think for like $400, $500.
Yeah.
It's something
It's
ridiculous.
You gotta find it in
crazy.
like a Goodwill
Well,
randomly or something.
yeah.
I decided to knit Luskentire like 10 years after the Scotch collection came out. Now, I bought all these books before Alice was really famous, and I've taken classes from her.
Oh, really?
Before she was really famous.
That's cool.
She used to come to the U.S. and teach at the TKGA conventions. So I've taken like 3 classes from her, and she was just
Wow.
delightful. So